All right. So lab 5, much like all the others, starts off with us getting a new file and saving it with appropriate names and all. Y'all have been doing a great job. Everybody's files have been clearly labeled, and I haven't had to give anybody a hard time about that. I have had a few people turn in the wrong files recently. So like for assignment 4, they turned in lab 4. So be careful when you're turning in things, that, especially if you're at home, that you're not grabbing the wrong one. You just saw 4 and threw it in there. Because if I got 2 lab 4s, you're not getting credit for it both places. Yeah. I'm not trying to be a pain in the behind, but definitely be careful what you're turning in. I had a couple of people that have turned in the directions instead of the actual code. I'm not giving you a grade for turning in my Word document. It's not how it works. Might have been different if it'd been the first time you turned something in, but by lab 3 and 4, you ought to know what you're turning in. Just a thought. All right, so in this particular lab, we are going to be using conditional statements. So we're going to be practicing with those ifs that we looked at yesterday or Monday in your class. And we are going to start making some decisions. So in this one, it actually tells you to copy and paste, which is why I made it a Word document and not a PDF. It's so much easier to copy and paste out of a Word document. That does mean, though, you may have to change a few things. Because like I said, Word likes to format things weird, so you may have to change quotation marks and stuff. Just be aware. So we're going to grab this whole function, and we're going to copy it and paste it into our code. I'm going to put a few lines above it because I know I'm going to go back and put the main in up there, because that was part 0 that I just kind of glossed over. Sorry. So up here, you should have a main method. With a print statement with your name in it. And what lab it is, or, you know, whatever the directions tell you to do. At the bottom, you know, don't forget to put the method call to call main. Because if you're like me, you don't go ahead and put it in. You get finished typing and go, oh, why is this running? And oh yeah, I forgot that one little line at the bottom. So part 1, we copied and pasted. Looks like it all copied and pasted correctly. You will see that there are triple quotes around the screen. Trust me, you need them. It's a formatting thing. It's where you actually use the quotation marks to show up in the when you're printing. Just agree with me that you're going to leave them alone, and it works. Promise. Because if you don't do it that way, if you really wanted the quotes to show up, like you're directly quoting somebody, they wouldn't show up if you only had one set. All right. So we got that in there. This function, we're going to modify. What we're going to do is we're going to check it. We're going to modify it where it will check the length of any string that our user puts in. So right now it's hard coded. If we ran it, and let's run it just to make sure it works, and the copy paste actually was good. And it only printed the print line. Why did it only print the print line? I didn't call it. I'm going to pretend I did that on purpose just to catch y'all. All right, so you and me is undefined right now. For testing purposes, I'm just going to hard code something in right now into main. Does that make sense? So let's put in Bob and Alex. Just need 2 strings to put in here, preferably names because that's what we were working with. But now if I run it, the total length should be 7, right? And it's a Bob 3 characters and Alex is 4 characters and added them together. We're all good? All right, so we need to modify it. So it will check the length, which is already doing. And also we need to put in a print line that tells which one is shorter and by how many characters. If the two names have the same length, then it should display a message indicating that. So in the directions, I've used the word if. That means we're probably going to use an if statement. Because there's 2 options there. We need to know which one is shorter, or we need to know which one if they're the same length. So we're going to create an if statement to go inside there to do that. So before the print lines, just to make it, you could do it afterwards, but before the print lines, because it makes it look prettier, I'm going to put code in here to check to see which one's shorter, right? Okay. So what am I going to do? If length of you is greater than length of me, I want to do something, right? You want to have a print statement? Yes. Oh, it's food. I'm trying to figure out what you had. Sorry, he had me. All right, anyway. So we really need to do 2 things. We need to know the difference in their lengths, right? Because we need that in our print statement. Yes? Yeah. So this is how I would do it. I'm just going to create a variable called difference. And I'm going, since length of you is going to be the bigger one, I'm going to do some math. Length of you minus length of me. And that should give me the difference between the 2 lengths, right? And then I want to print you plus, oh wait, it's a shorter name. Print me Now, anybody see anything that's going to hold us up on that print statement? And there is something. Oh, I didn't make it bigger. Why didn't y'all remind me to make it bigger? Options. Well, the one I was thinking about was this. Not capitalized. You have to force difference to be a string. right? Because it was a number. We did math. But I just did Java for you, didn't I? Print statements have commas on them, don't they, in Python? Yeah, because it creates a string, but not always. If you use the commas, it definitely won't. But all right, when I ran it, it didn't do anything. Why didn't it do anything? Because you were shorter, right? So let's change this to Bobby. Now Bobby's longer than Alex. Still didn't do anything. So I did something wrong. Well, yeah, I did. It's up here. Sorry. Just out of order. Do you want to put them in the order in? That's fine. It's up to you. Yes, ma'am.
Mine's saying that, or mine's not wrong. It's the same length as this. Well, never mind.
Okay. All right, so now I know this works, so oops. It'll still work that way. It just puts it all in one string for you. Now I want to do the next part. So now if we do else if, I'm lazy, so I'm copying and pasting. And I'm just going to reverse the order. Why am I reversing the order in the math? Because if you don't, you have a negative number instead of a positive number, and that's not really the difference, right? That makes sense? And then if it's equal, what am I going to do? Well, all that's left is equal. So if I just put else and then print right? Does that make sense? So we test for one condition, you is bigger than me. Then we test for the second condition, me is bigger than you. And then everything else must be equal to each other. So there's no reason for a test. Could you have done this in different orders? Absolutely. You could have done it any way you wanted to, as long as you tested each condition. Now, if you want it to print out in the order that they originally had it printed, you can move these print lines. Up here. And now it should be back in the order it was. I don't think it's as pretty that way, but that's just me and my style of coding. I like all the print statements to the end of the function. All right. So now if we run it, and I could do this part multiple times. And give it different names. We'll go back to Bob here. And we can make this Tony. That's 4 letters, right? So now if I run it, the first time Bob is shorter. The second time Tony is shorter. All right. No, first time Alex is shorter. Second time Bob is shorter. The third time they're equal to each other. So it tells you the information once for each time I called it. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? Oh, also quiet.
I'm experiencing some
Technical difficulties. Okay. What kind of technical difficulties are you experiencing today? Ask a question. It might be to the benefit of everybody.
well, it's only printing it once, even though I have to edit. and the-
But did you call it multiple times in May? How many times did you call it? How many times you have say you say me with names in it?
That makes a lot of sense.
Does that name? Because it should, if you call this once, it should only print one set of information. It should not run it for all three choices. Once it finds once it's right, it should stop.
Mine's
Because that one little space right there.
what was the one you used for it? Anyways, because we're in-
No? I don't see a problem with that. Give me just a second. I'll come back to you, okay? Yes, sir.
Come on, I didn't. I didn't.
Somehow, I think if you didn't concatenate them. you would probably- that's fine. All right, so. It has been pointed out that you don't actually have to have the STR conversion. That's because it concatenated it into a string and forced it to be a string. But sometimes when we're doing other things, like printing and using the commas to separate pieces, it forces you to do it. So I have just gotten in the habit of doing it. Better safe than sorry than having to go back and find it and having a type mismatch or something. Also swapping between Java and Python. I just started adding the extra stuff to make sure it ran. Yes, sir.
Well, if you did like a shorter name in the beginning,
Mhm.
and then I went and did still work.
Yes, but your print statement will look funny because it's gonna put a negative number in there. You want your output to be pretty, right?
Well, I mean,
There will be times where you will be graded on whether or not your output is appropriate.
well,
So if,
I'm just asking that.
yeah, it would absolutely print the negative number. The difference will hold a negative number. In this case, you don't want to because the print statement would be wrong. Or wouldn't make sense. Because, a user reading is shorter by -2. I know, they're gonna be being nitpicky. So we've done all this. We run the program and verified that it prints for all three scenarios. So we can move to part 2. So we want to make a decision and return a value from the function. So, because some functions return values. So far, we're just printing statements, but let's return a value. So we're going to need to return whether or not you have to go to bed before 10 p.m. And you're all college students. You probably never go to bed before 10 p.m. But we're gonna pretend that you do. So we're gonna write a function called go to bed. This function should take a single parameter named hour slept. This parameter will represent the number of hours the person slept the night before. For example, if you give it 7.5, that means you slept 7.5 hours the night before. So since it will take a 0.5, that means that we're going to be dealing with floats, right? So Within the function, check to see if the numbers of hours slept is less than or equal to 5.5. If so, the function will return the following string. You need to go to bed before 10 p.m. Otherwise, the function says you can stay up past midnight. So they want to make sure you got at least 5.5 hours to sleep the night before if you want to stay up late tonight. Never in my life has that worked, but we're going to give it a shot. So we're going to write the function header and go from there. So we're going to have a function that we're going to define as go to bed. Don't forget to tab yourself back out to the edge of the screen, because if you leave it tabbed in, and then your function is inside of a function. That makes sense? It needed a parameter called hours slept. Inside of here, it says add a doc string, but we kind of skipped that and I didn't go over doc strings, so y'all just ignore doc strings for right now. If you want to figure it out, you can, but you don't have to. Doc strings are comments that can be gathered up at the end of a program to create documentation files. Yes, sir.
If we're doing doc strings, we still need to add the comments.
You still need comments, but if you don't have to know if you have doc strings, no, you don't need additional comments. If you don't have doc strings, put comments in. I'll hit them. I'll go back and grab that lecture portion and hit that for you guys during that short week next week, so you know what doc strings are. It's mostly covered in the book and not in my lectures. I need to fix that. So, the function body, write the if statement to check the hours slept. So we're just going to jump straight into if statements. If hours slept is less than 5.5, we need to less than or equal to, so equal to sign in there. The body should tell us to return that. So we need to return a string. And you don't have to put a space there, but it's prettier to read if you put the space there. I'm gonna put some more blank lines in here where I can scroll up. Y'all can see a little bit better. All right, can y'all see that better? Trying to get it over the monitors for the people that are in the front. All right, so you're saying, that's not a print statement. It's got return in front of it. So it will return the string value just as it's written. It needs to be returned to a variable or inside of a print statement, or you will never see it again after you run it. So when we call this one, we're going to call it a little bit differently. We're going to call it either inside a print statement, or we're going to call the function set equal to a variable that we can print out later. Does that make sense? I'm going to show you just a second. Yeah.
And you just like return it and add the print statement at the return instead of like having to call it different.
No. Because if you don't save that string somewhere after you run it, it's automatically garbage collected, and you can't do anything with it after the run has executed.
So if you were to return that point that.
Hold on a second. I'm gonna do you some examples, and I think you'll see where I'm going. So we need to finish this out with an else, right? Else we're gonna return, you can stay up to midnight. you can stay up past midnight. So now if I went up here and I want to, for the sake of speed and not having to read through it all, I'm going to comment these out. I'm going to uncomment them before I turn it in though, where when I grade it, it all runs, right? So if I just do go to bed and put 4.5 in here and run it, I'm not going to get any errors. It's absolutely going to run it, but it didn't do anything with the string. You see, it just printed my name because I didn't do anything with it. And I can't do like suggested and just go and write a print statement here, because how would I know what I'm printing? Does that make sense? So what you need to do is you either need to do it as a print with the function call inside of it, or you need to do some variable, we'll call it X for lack of a better thing. No, let's call it bed. We'll call it bedtime even. How about that? Equals to go. Let's put a different number in there. Then you can print. Right? So those are two ways you can do it. You can either just have the call inside of the print, because you're only going to use it once and never see that data again. Or if you think you're going to need that string multiple times, save it into a variable, and then you can do what you want to with the variable throughout your code. That make sense? Yeah.
So can you scroll back?
Scroll down.
Yeah, so when you return that value, you can save that into a variable called bedtime and just print it.
Yes.
Okay.
If you don't, it runs and it creates the string, but in nanoseconds it's thrown away. Yeah.
So why can't you have it be like, so like an hour stuff is less than or equal to 5.5? Why can't you have it print, go to bed before 10 and then the else statement be?
You absolutely could have it print just like we did in the first function, but I'm showing you how to return values. This is a learning tool only. There's no reason for you not to just print it, except that I'm trying to teach you that you can return things. So if I run this now, I should have one telling me I can stay up late and one telling me that I need to go to bed because I changed the, oh no, I didn't make it high enough for that. 7.5 hours was staying up late. 5.5. Okay. So I did math, morning. So if I run this now, I should have one for each option. So the first one says I need to go to bed before 10 p.m. The second one says I can stay up late, which is exactly what I was expecting. The great thing about putting it into a variable is that if I need that sentence or that piece of information again, I already have it available. I don't have to though. I can call that function every time I need it. Like when we were doing our projects and you had to draw multiple triangles, you can call the function as many times as you need it. Right? The only difference is this one is returning data, and depending on how you want to use that data, you either need to store it as a variable, put it into something that automatically displays or prints. Sometimes if it's returning a number, you might be putting it into a math equation. If you only need it for that math equation, then you don't need to store it, you just set it up correctly. This gets easier as you do it. It makes more sense as you practice it, in my opinion. All right, any other questions before I move on? Yes, ma'am. Yours says what? You don't have the else statement, so that makes sense for the last one. No, it didn't return anything. Let me scroll up a second. You're missing a line. The board, if it ever worked on the first try, you're missing these two lines at the bottom. So none is absolutely the correct answer to the computer because you didn't actually get anything to return. All right, so we've done them with return types and without return types. What's our next step? We're gonna do that grade thing that I told you we were gonna do that we did as an example in class, right? So we're gonna set it up. So we're gonna enter 3 grades, student 1's grade, student 2's grade, student 3's grade, and then we're gonna tell them whether it's an A, B, C, or D, or an F, based on what the grades entered are, right? So we're going to write a function called determine letter grade. It's going to take a parameter called score. That means we're going to get all of our input values from the main, probably, because we're passing in the score. And we're going to write an if statement that checks to see what the score is based on 90 and above being an A, 80 and that 89 is a B, etc., etc. Standard grading system, right? I'm going to read through it all before I start typing because I want to see what all my if categories are. So the last statement of the function is to return the grade variable. So now I know I'm returning values, right? And then we'll put all this together in the main probably. Oh no, we're going to have a second function. Keep reading. So we're going to get the grades in one function. That function is then going to call determine letter grade. Making your brain hurt yet? It's early in the morning, so.
No, I'm totally awake.
Okay, it's all right. So the only thing that's going to be in main is get student grades. Get student grades is going to call determine letter grade. This should be old news to you guys because we did it with draw bus. We did it with draw picture. So we're just calling a function from a function. All right, so let's write the first one and then we'll write the next one. So I want to write determine letter grade first. We're not going to really be able to test it until we get the second function running, because all the testing information is in the second one. So we're going to write 2 functions, then we're going to test. So in here, back in here, we're going to do find determine letter grade. It's going to take a score, right? It's just going to be a long sequence of if else's. So if score is greater than or equal to 90, oops, wrong symbol, greater than, equal to 90, I'm going to return A, else if score is greater than or equal to 80, I'm going to return a B, else if You see where I'm going here, right? We're just gonna keep going. And for the last one, since everything else would be an F, I can just return. I don't need a test, I could just return. Oops. Right? Just that simple.
What was that example last class where I think it was obviously different, but if it was above 60, all of them would be the same grade. Like, what was different about that?
If I just made them all ifs and didn't have the EL in front of them,
Why is that?
because then they're independent and they're not conditional upon each other.
So all the elements are dependent on the thing.
Yeah, so in this example, the if starts the chain reaction. Once it finds the one that works, that gets true, then it skips everything else.
And then it starts again.
The next time it's called.
Again.
Yeah. So if you give this in just ifs, though, every one should change.
Okay.
So if I had an 80, let's say, for a grade, and these were all ifs, the first one wouldn't run because 80 is not greater than 90. But every other one would work because 80 is greater than all the other numbers. Now, I did this with return statements in each of the ifs. You could have done it as a variable and then had the last line return the value. Perfectly acceptable either way. The directions tell you to do it the way I didn't do it, to set up a variable and then return the variable. But either way works. If you want to see it the other way, I'll be happy to do that too. But let's get the other function running and make sure that what I did works. So the next function is to get the student grades. It doesn't have any parameters. We're going to prompt the user for the number of students to enter. We're going to convert that value to an integer because if we don't, we can't use it. Also, when we get the grade from the user, we're going to have to do the conversions, right? Because all input comes in as strings. So first thing we want to do is input how many grades do you want to enter, or something similar to that. Doesn't have to be exactly that, but something similar to that. Then we're going to, oh, sorry, didn't set it equal to something. Then I'm going to convert students to an integer. Why did I choose an integer and not a float? Because you should never have a partial student. A fraction of a person is just gross. We won't know body parts, just whole students. All right. And then we want to set up a for loop, right? right? So I want an input statement. I need it to tell me which student I'm entering the grade for, so I'm gonna use I as the number for, right? I starts at 0, so I probably should add 1 to it, right? That make sense? When I get it, I want to determine the letter grade for it and then print out the student's letter grade, right? All of this is under the direction for this for loop, so we're going to do it all in there, right? So I'm going to put my if statement inside of my for loop, which is absolutely something you can do anytime. You can put ifs inside of fors, you can put fors inside of ifs. Yes, sir.
What does the I represent?
Just the counter for how many times the loop is run.
So once you get to like student 5, I's gonna be 5.
Mm-hmm. But remember, we put the +1 on there because for loops generally start counting at 0. So, all right. So if, no, sorry. Determine so I know I need to print out something. So if I wanted to print out what the letter grade was, I could do this. But it seems like it had some formatting it wanted us to do. So I'm gonna go back and look. Student's letter grade is B. So I need to put some words in front of it. Can't type today. So it's a really long line. Let me pull this over where you can see it. It's bigger. So I'm going to call a function inside of a print statement, which is, like I said, absolutely acceptable. The reason I'm doing that is because I don't really need to store it. I just need to print it. So I'm not wasting the time creating a variable, but you could. So this should run it however many times it asks for students, and it should print out everything. So up here in main, I'm going to call forgot what I named it now. Student grades. Again, I'm going to comment out just where our print are easier to read. Let's read it and see if I typed anything wrong. How many grades do I want to enter? Let's enter 3. Let's do a 92. Oh, I have a bad one. Not supported between instances of string and int. Okay, so it doesn't like my type somewhere, right? And seems like it's on line 38. So let's go back and look at line 38. You go to options and show line numbers. It makes your life so much easier. So right here, it thinks score was passed in as a string, right? So if we come down here, I didn't change grade. See that? So I left the line out right here where you do grade equals int grade. Now it should run. Fingers crossed. The grades will enter 3, put in a 92, an 81, and a 56, just because I want to see what it looks like. And I really want my screen to scroll. Get out of the way. So, does that look correct? All right. And for those of you that are still having some issues, I am absolutely going to come around and help you get them working in just a second. So if we go back to our Word document, we have finished all of Lab. I'm going to stop the recording, and then I'm going to come around and look at everybody's code that's having problems and make sure that it's working. All right.